Hello, my name is Nia Hill. I've chosen to unpack an episode from the televised series Snowfall for my video essay. Snowfall is an American televised series that was created by John Singleton, Eric Amadio, and Dave Andron in 2017. The series is dramatized and based off of a true story that takes place in Los Angeles in the early 1980s. The 3 seasons that have aired address the first crack cocaine epidemic and its impact on the city. The specific season and episode I decided to unpack for my video essay is Season 2, Episode 8. Within the series Snowfall and this specific episode, the two phenomenons of privilege and oppression help aid the audience in developing a critical lens to understand varying perspectives, specifically through gender roles and communication. The main argument I will defend to be true from this 21st century example is that Snowfall exemplifies manipulative and dominative actions within characters who run their own drug operations. Both Franklin and Lucia's actions align with the concept of unearned advantages and conferred dominance. These ideas were taught in our gender and communication class. As Peggy McIntosh describes it, privilege exists when one group has something of value that is denied to others simply because of the groups they belong to rather than anything they've done or failed to do. An example of this is you're in a group and you all have to complete a group project. Everyone will need to introduce themselves and exchange numbers. The dynamic of the interactions within the group is timid, and no one really wants to initiate conversations. Inevitably, the first person to speak or initiate conversation will take the unearned advantage. Everyone had the opportunity to initiate conversation. However, most assume once somebody begins interactions, they can submit to their conferred dominance. So, to understand this better, both Franklin, who is a male, and Lucia, who is a female, gained their unearned advantages because they either were brought up into a drug cartel or organization, or they envisioned their own drug cartel and own drug organization. And their subordinates would inevitably obtain their conferred dominance because they either didn't want to lose their friendship or relationship with the character. So, dominative actions done by Franklin and Lucia are acted out within this episode to ensure their own selfish ambitions or future with their significant others. Submission is necessary and is constantly promoted as a motive throughout this episode in order to ensure their desires and the compliance of their subordinates that deflect from normal gender roles. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing stated in an interview that whites behave the way that they do because of their minority status on the planet and their recessive genetic status. White people could be genetically annihilated if the reproduction of Caucasians is ceased. Nothing mixed with white creates white. However, we as the minority are told that we do not make up the majority, when in fact we do. However, it is ironic to me that black people are genetically superior than whites, as in if you or any varying race conceives children with black people, their offspring will still exemplify as such. Yet black people are the most marginalized, stereotyped, and discriminated against. So white supremacy and white power can still exist. These lies have been embedded in our heads since the birth of this nation and since we as a race entered this nation unwillingly. Although we are no longer enslaved, our psychological state remains in shackles. Racism is a system that functions in all activities and institutions we have established, such as education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The purpose of this system is to support the idea of white over non-white supremacy. Although John Singleton, Eric Amadio, and Dave Andron are providing a visual aid of the first crack epidemic in Los Angeles, these ideals, specifically about race, labor, entertainment, and sex, align with the continuation of oppressing black people and other peoples of color, such as Hispanics, as Lucia is. Franklin utilizes the functions of nonverbal communication to hold onto the talking stage, and he usually avoids eye contact to make controversial commands within the series. This is specifically seen in his relationship with his friend Kevin, who was actively trying to overthrow his organization, whereas Lucia uses nonverbal communication to invite others into her conversations. The CIA agents that manipulate and have all authoritative powers over this drug lord and drug queen consciously and unconsciously maintain rigid norms of binary and heteronormative gender performances through being and enacting as vessels of the government and state. Lucia and Franklin are in pivoting positions for both of their cartels. Lucia's boyfriend, Gustavo, has just been taken by the undercover CIA agents and can either run or submit herself to the state. Whereas Franklin's best friend, Kevin, is actively trying to overthrow his organization. Both of these situations end in death. Lucy is killed by the undercover CIA agent, and Franklin kills his friend. As Latinx and Black minorities living as heterosexuals and impoverished beings, their opportunities and financial freedoms are limited. Their lives constantly were structured to say, your lives don't matter, and your story will always align with the cultural stereotypes associated with your minorities, no matter how hard you try to deflect from it. Lucia was brought up in a family where drug trafficking was all she knew, whereas Franklin went to college and tried to pursue obtaining his degree. However, his financial and economic status would not allow him to continue or to have the power or the opportunity to enter an institution that was designed for everyone but his kind. Lucia gained her unearned advantage by being raised in a family where she would inherit a drug cartel. Franklin gained an unearned advantage by wanting to become more than what he was and supply his family with something they never had, money. Whereas both of their romantic partners and crew gained conferred dominance by not wanting to overstep any boundaries. Lucia and Franklin could also be the targets of the CIA and other government bureaus who are trying to convict them so drug cartels and operations within Los Angeles can be exposed. Franklin and Lucia were both aware that their operations were compromised and that they had now become informants. Both of these individuals tried to ensure complete autonomy over their own drug operations. However, their protection and plan of power was still compromised and undermined with all of these actions. This suggests to the audience that these decisions were not one where ultimatums were presented, but a personal choice that these characters knew they would have to carry out to live their envisioned life. Franklin and Lucia's identity and its relationship to power, racism, and sexism work together to undermine us all. These ideals of labor, sex, entertainment, and race need to exemplify and evoke change. We as a people need to want change and request more of the 1% being the rich. Everyone should have equal opportunities, social justice, and economic stature. But how will we do this? Through change. We need to change our mindsets, our normalities, and what we deem as appropriate as a society. Our women need to have and be in more roles of power. Criminal activities done and committed by all races need to be publicized and exemplified through entertainment, and not just people of color. Everyone should envision how the world would look if genetically dominant people of color had all authoritative roles in the world. Black people and people of color should not be so submissive or forgiving to the white race. We should embrace our power and teach generational wealth and remain superior. And this problem will be no longer. Thank you so much for listening.